Welcome back. So today we're tackling chapter 15, and this chapter is what we prepared for when we killed Percival in chapter, what was it, 12, 13? Whenever we killed Percival. It's been a while since I've sat down and done one of these, so I've forgotten a few things about our run so far, but that's alright, I'll remember as we go on, I'm sure. So if we hadn't killed Percival when we did, which again I believe was back in chapter 13, then he would have spawned on the very first turn at the top of the screen above where all our units are standing right now, and he would have spawned with a bunch of paladins, and he would have had very, very, very scary stats, and I wasn't confident that I'd be able to kill him there. But luckily we killed him with Lance earlier, and so he did not spawn. I mean, I say luckily, of course, but him being dead means that we don't get to have him, which we, obviously we wouldn't be able to use him anyway, but you know what I mean. I'm sad we don't get to use Percival. He's so good, but we don't get him. Who we do get though, we get two new units this chapter. The first one is Igrene. You may have already seen her if you were paying attention. She traded off a killer bow to Wolt. She's actually one of my favorite characters in FE6. I really like Igrene. I really like using her. I really like her design, even though she's a sniper. But unfortunately we can't use her, of course. She's not part of the squad, so she's basically just going to trade that killer bow to Wolt and then sit in a bush for the rest of the map. I'm not even going to move her because there's not much point. There's no reinforcements, at least not from this, not this part of the map. Speaking of Igrene, I thought I'd just go over her stats real quick. I don't think I've ever flashed them on screen, but she has roughly 1 point of speed less than Wolt and 6 points of strength more than Wolt. So she's very similar to Klein. When Klein joined, he was ever so slightly slower than Wolt, but significantly stronger. And that trend is being continued in the next pre-promoted sniper to join us. So Wolt is pretty much worse than both of the pre-promoted snipers that have joined us so far. Obviously he has the potential to be better than them if he doesn't level up poorly like Marcus just did. But unfortunately ours is very strength screwed, and he's pretty much worse than Igrene in every way. He also has significantly less res, meaning that he's worse at killing mages, which is actually something you kind of want your archers to do most of the time. But well, such is life, we have to use Wolt. I guess I'll get over it. So in this map, another character we get that I alluded to earlier is Garret. He's someone who we've been waiting for quite some time. He is a pre-promoted berserker, so he's a little bit different in utility from Ward. I was actually under the impression that he was a second warrior. I'm not entirely sure why. I guess I just read his unit profile wrong or something like that. But it doesn't make too huge of a difference. We'll talk about him more when we get him, but I figured I'd just point it out that we're going to get him. So we've already killed a bunch of enemies so far. One of them was a Valkyrie, who's really quite difficult to deal with. Valkyries are very, very fast. There's not many units under my control that can actually double them and do decent damage. But we do have a lot of units at our disposal, so getting these kills isn't too difficult. One of these cavalry actually had a horse slayer, so we had to be very careful of him. I believe Rutger killed him already. You may have noticed that Milady picked up Lilina earlier, and that's because Lilina is the only person who can recruit Garret. And so I wanted to get Lilina all the way up to the part of the map where Garret spawns as quickly as possible without taking any pit stops for combat or healing or whatever. So I figured the fastest way to do that would be to just have Milady ferry her over there. I don't really need either of them in terms of combat utility. And speaking of Garret, there he is. He spawns with two other bandits who are non-threats because they're axe units in FE6, and we know how that ends for axe units. These mercenaries are kind of a threat though, honestly. One of them is actually so fast that Rutger doesn't double them, which is honestly terrifying because I think Rutger has 21 speed? 20 or 21 speed. He's very fast. So for him to not double means that these guys are also very, very fast. Lance is in a good spot here on the fort. Unfortunately, Milady has to go around this archer, otherwise she would have been able to go straighter up and maybe being able to get closer to Garret, but that's okay. Garret is still roughly 2 to 3 turns away. I think he's about 2 turns away. Another reason why we have to get to the village and get to Garret fast is because the guys who spawn with Garret will destroy the village that we can just barely see on the right side of the screen. And in that village is a Hammerne staff. If you're not familiar with the Hammerne staff, it's a staff that can fully repair the uses on any weapon or staff. I don't know if it works on Phase Dragonstone. I haven't tested it, and I know Mer's Dragonstone in FE8 cannot be Hammerned, but for most intents and purposes, we're going to say that it can restore the uses on every weapon and staff utility thing. In a standard run, most people would probably use all 3 of their Hammerne uses on the warp staff, but of course we didn't manage to find the warp staff, so that's not going to be an option for us. I don't even know what we're going to use it on, to be honest. I did want to have it just because it's very useful, but who knows, maybe I can use it on a legendary weapon, maybe I can use it on just a very powerful weapon, like a killer weapon or something. I've got no idea, to be honest though, but just having it is a boon in and of itself. So we finally get to see Saul in his promoted form. We didn't get to bring him last chapter, unfortunately, because he just barely got cut out of our deployment order. But we finally get to see him, and he doesn't do much more than he already used to do, honestly. I mean, it's nice that he can fight now. It really makes me feel safer about putting him in range of enemies, especially because it means that 2-range enemies are less likely to go for him and more likely to go for other people. Nice little up from Rutger here, by the way. Yeah, he had 22 speed, and I don't think he doubled one of these mercenaries, so that's pretty crazy. But as I was saying, with Saul, it is nice that he has that combat utility, but in terms of player phase action, he's mostly going to be healing, and that's about it, I'd imagine. Healing is just too useful. Speaking of very useful, Lilina here just cleaning up that sniper, easy peasy. Getting some work done, and she's also just barely in range of that hand axe brigand, but I think we'll be fine. She can live at least 1. And here we get the Hammerne staff with Milady, just because I wanted to get it done and out of the way so I don't have to worry about getting the village. There's not too many enemies left here for my main group to deal with anyway, so once I heal up Rutger, I think I can pretty much kill all of them this turn. I have a lot of units left to use. One unit that I have struggled to use consistently for the last few maps is Boars, and that doesn't change here. Again, in this map, I don't think he accomplishes a single thing except, I don't know, walking. I guess exercise is an accomplishment for this fat lard. Okay, that was a bit harsh. I'm sorry, Boars. What happened to you, man? He was so useful during the early chapters back when we were fighting soldiers and stuff. But now that we have actual enemies with actual stats, he's just fallen off so hard. Decent level up from Sue there. I mean, it's kind of whatever stats. She's actually very close to cap. I've had the promotion item on her for a few chapters now, I think, 1 or 2. But I haven't ever pulled the trigger because I haven't ever felt the need to. She gets experience decently fast, and it's not like unlike Lilina, who needed to be able to heal as soon as possible, she's kind of doing everything I want her to do as is, so I never felt the need to pull the trigger on that promotion early, and so she actually will cap out this chapter. I make it a point, I make an effort to cap her and then promote her by the end of the chapter, since there are a few reinforcements to farm off of. And here's Garret. He's just walked right into range, so very, very convenient enemy placement there. Get to see his stats here for a second. So he's ever so slightly weaker than Ward. He's about 3 points of strength weaker than Ward, but he's also 3 points of speed, 3 to 4 points of speed faster than Ward, which, I mean, 11 speed isn't fantastic, granted, but I reckon 11 speed is probably going to be enough to prevent some doubles that Ward would fall for, which, you know, I mean, that's survivability right there. He also has the highest base HP of any unit that can join you in this game, 56 I think, which is absolutely huge. I mean, awe at the size of this lad, he's an absolute unit. And as a unit, he's pretty good, honestly. I mean, he does suffer from the same thing that every axe unit in this game suffers from, which is terrible accuracy. But he sort of makes up for it by having natural crit, much like sword masters, like Rutger, Berserkers get a natural, I think it's like 20 or 30% crit, so even without a killer weapon he'll have 20 to 30% crit, and with a killer weapon he can have upwards of 60, which means that his killing power is going to be significantly higher than Ward's, especially since he isn't going to get doubled by everything. He may even double some enemies, who knows. And you see here Boar's just struggling to keep up. I mean, it's not like there's anything for him to do anyway. I guess he could, you know, do some damage to those calves or whatever. Could tank a point, choke a point or something like that. I don't know. It's so hard to use this guy, really. I'm waiting for that promotion so bad. I want to see what it actually does for him, but I somehow doubt that it's going to make him any better than he already is. I really wish he got those boots. It would have made it a lot easier to attempt to use him. So since one of those horses has a horse slayer, I decided to just fall back a bit out of that guy's range so that we can tackle him with a non-cavalry enemy, unit. And as we should be getting used to seeing throughout this series, I'm just going to leave Marcus and Lance to create a choke point and let them crash into me. Very familiar sight here, it should be. So Marcus is still doubling. After that speed wings, he's still at that threshold where he can double, but unfortunately his strength is kind of falling off. I believe he's only 1 point of strength higher than Wolt at this point. If I had gotten that energy ring back all the way back in the chapter where Bartray joined us, which I think was 11? I think it was 11 or 12. If I had gotten that energy ring, I probably would have given it to Marcus by now. 13 strength is fine. He does get access to decently strong weapons. I think he has S rank lances or something like that, so that all helps him contribute still. But he's definitely falling off in terms of damage output. So this is the guy with the horse slayer. I decided to just try Garret, see if he can get a crit. He doesn't, but he does a decent amount of damage, and that's enough for Milady to clean up. I think Milady could have one-rounded even without that hit, maybe? I don't know, but either way, Milady will get that kill. Something I hadn't realized at this point was that Milady has actually capped strength, so every level up she got, like during this map or the map previous, I was just thinking, why isn't she getting strength? She's got such a high strength growth. Without actually checking her and seeing, oh, she's capped. So I definitely should have promoted her this chapter. I will rectify that next chapter. I'll promote her at the very start. But that's a few levels there where we could have gotten strength level ups but didn't, just because she was capped. But well, live and learn, and it's not like, you know, the extra point of strength she may have gotten from a level up while promoted is going to matter too much. It's not like she's a weakling like Wolt, where every single point matters. This part of the map is just moving up my army. I could have sped it up a little bit, I suppose, but the map is short enough anyway. I figured it's not really worth it. If the map were like 40 minutes plus, I would have sped up this part. But it's only 25 minutes or so. So we can afford to just sit here and watch all these guys die. Sue barely has enough strength with that iron bow to take down that wyvern. Wyverns are so bulky. That's more on wyverns than it is on Sue. I'm not saying Sue's weak, it's just that wyverns are really, really bulky. Much like our own Milady. Lance level up here, HP, skill, res. That's okay, I suppose? I don't know. I'm not a huge fan of it, but whatever. And here, a miracle, Milady hitting javelins. Milady never hits javelins, and she just hit 2 of them in a row. And yeah, I see there, she got HP and skill. She probably would have got strength if she wasn't capped, but she's capped at this point. So, that's my bad, my mistake. And the rest of this map is basically just push through the reinforcements and get to the boss. So after we've dealt with this one wyvern, eventually reinforcements will start spawning. Some of them spawn from the forts that you can see dotted around the map, so I'll leave Boars on the one that's directly in front of him, and I'll leave some other units on the ones that are a little bit further up. But other than those reinforcements, after a certain point every turn some cavalry will spawn near the boss. This is probably to try to get you to kill him quickly, and you definitely can kill him much more quickly than I did. His stats are actually very non-threatening. He's not scary at all as a boss, especially if you have someone like Percival under your control. Unfortunately, I don't, of course. Another strategy many people employ is to just send Milady up and crit him to death, and then have Milady or another one of your flyers ferry Roy up and just seize, because even a level 1 Roy isn't necessarily too threatened by a few of these enemies. He can live for a little while, but of course our Roy is actually quite decent for a Roy. And up we go. I was being a little bit cautious at this point, just because I wasn't exactly sure what turn the reinforcements come from these forts. Unfortunately, I can't quite get to either one of them, so I was a little bit scared at this point, because I think I thought they were coming out the next turn, but I don't think they do. So I do make it in time to stick some otherwise useless units on them, just to make sure nothing spawns out of them. This map would actually be decently challenging if these forts all spawned enemies at the same time that cavalry came from the boss. But of course, the game has given us the option to skip that entirely. So yeah, here he's going to talk about reinforcements, which is basically just a cue to the player saying, hurry up. Of course, there's not much I can do. A lot of my units are kind of slow, and they prefer a slow playstyle. I could just blitz ahead with Lance and Marcus, but that can get kind of dicey, especially since my physics stuff is kind of low. That's actually something I could use the Hammerne stuff on. I might just fix my physics stuff. That's a good idea. I'm gonna keep that in my brain for later. So with the help of Marcus and Lance, we'll take down that sniper, and then the rest of the enemies here are not really threats to my paladins. My paladins are just so beefy. They're just so good. You know, I said Garret has the highest base HP of any joinable unit, any recruitable unit, but I think Lance is only like 3 points of HP off that. And granted, I believe he was fed an angelic robe at the start of the run, but you know, even ignoring that, he's got some HP on him. That boy's thick. Moving up with everyone else, a little bit of a chore. Eventually the fighting will start up again once the reinforcements start coming out, which should be at the end of this player phase, I'd imagine. If not this player phase, then the next player phase. And poor Boars, the only thing he's going to contribute the whole map is just sitting on that fort. That's all he does. I don't think he does a single point of damage, anything like that. Such a shame. I actually didn't notice that mercenary could get to Garret. I thought that the forest tile, the bush tile, would stop him from having the movement required, but I guess not. So now that mercenary's on a fort, which is kind of annoying, and Milady dodges a sniper, an archer shot, which would not have done that much damage anyway because she's on a fort and she's Milady. She has defense for days. This archer doesn't have much defense though, because even Wolt can one round that guy safely. Speaking of one-rounding, because he's on the fort, this guy had some thick skin, but of course Rutger is a crit machine. He doesn't care about your defense. He'll just crit it all away. And for this turn, I'm gonna leave Garret on the fort because he needs some healing anyway, and he probably can't contribute much in terms of killing that mercenary or that cavalier right there. Heal up Rutger as well, just because I wanted to be safe. Rutger has a lot of HP as well. He'd almost certainly be fine, but I didn't want to risk anything at this point. The map's almost over and I don't need to risk anything. So at this point, at the end of this turn, I reckon some reinforcements are going to start coming. I decided that this mercenary is a bigger problem than the cavalier, just because mercenaries are fast and do a lot of damage, whereas cavaliers are usually just kind of bulky, kind of middle ground-ish in terms of stats. So I figured we'd be fine, and here they come. Here come the reinforcements. These guys are going to be spawning probably for the rest of the map, which granted isn't that long at this point. It's like 5 minutes left of the map or so. Marcus will destroy that cavalier. Yeah, these cavaliers really aren't all that threatening. This wyvern's a little bit of a concern just because he's so bulky, but he'll go down this turn to Wolt probably, if I was smart. Yeah, looks like it. He doesn't have a javelin or anything, so Wolt is completely safe. And Wolt honestly has the HP and defense to be able to take some melee hits. That's one thing that he does do better than Igrene, I will admit. He has slightly more HP and I think slightly more defense as well. And of course that combined with the single extra bonus speed means that he's slightly more survivable against physical enemies. But if you're having to leave your archer in range of physical enemies where he can't counterattack, then you know, you've kind of fucked up already, haven't you? You've already made a mistake. I decided to send Saul in here to heal up before I let Marcus fight. I figure there's no way I won't be able to deal with these guys. And I decided to try to get a crit on that guy to kill him, just to get some more experience on Sue, which works. I obviously didn't need to do that. That guy wasn't really a threat. But I have an extra killer bow from Igrene now, and I think I may have one in the convoy as well, and one on Wolt already, so I don't really need to conserve them. I can use them where it makes sense to get some extra kills, and I really want to cap Sue at this point, so I want all the kills on her that I can get. And I decided to leave Milady on that fort. Milady and Garret are probably going to be on the forts for the rest of the map, just to prevent any potential reinforcements. I never know with this game. I don't want to test things, really. At this point in the map, I'm not willing to test it. It doesn't matter. So I decided if I can do some damage with this guy without critting, then I can get the kill with Sue. But unfortunately, the one time that you don't want your Berserker to crit is when he will crit. So that Cavalier dies. And as much as I said the boss was kind of wimpy earlier, it's not like he's a free kill per se. He's just not as scary as other enemies we've fought so far. And here I didn't want Rutger to get a crit either, so that Sue could do something. But of course, Rutger being the crit machine that he is, he gets the crit. And that means Sue's gonna have to wait for another turn. Have to wait for another day to get her kills. So I decided to leave Marcus and Lance in range of all the reinforcement paladins, just because why not? Move Roy up a little bit so he's closer to the throne. Here come two more of them. They're gonna go around for Rutger because they're stupid and they have a death wish. And the other one's gonna go for Marcus because lol 2 range. So Marcus can do a decent amount of damage to this guy. I'm hoping that it's enough for Sue to get a kill. I actually get quite greedy. I didn't really need to send Sue all the way down here, to be completely honest with you. And she actually does take a lot of damage, so you know, she could have potentially died on the next turn if I got unlucky. And the level up is not all that great either. That's usually what I mean when I say it's not worth taking someone all the way to 20. Like for Sue, in Sue's case it was easy because I didn't need her to promote and she gets a lot of experience. But looking at those levels, does she really gain all that much from getting that extra level as opposed to promoting at level 19 and getting extra speed, strength, defense and res and HP? I don't know. I don't really think it's worth it most of the time to late promote. Or to cap out, rather. So we'll attempt to start whittling down the boss. He's kind of whatever. He's not that strong. But that's alright. We don't like our tough bosses anyway. We like our bosses that just fold in one turn. It makes the maps go quicker. And the maps will go pretty quick. There's just going to be this one round of reinforcements. Maybe another one after this, I don't know. But they're, as I said earlier, they're not threats. They don't even hit anything because they're using javelins. Of course, Lance being Lance just doesn't like to get crits. He doesn't want to use his killer lance for its intended purpose. He thinks that he's good enough, even without it. And here I'm going to promote Sue, so she gets to turn into a Nomad Trooper, I believe the class is called, or maybe just a Nomad. Gets a funny hat. And gets some rockin' gear for her horse. And these stats are honestly pretty good. She's a bit frail still, just a little bit, but she's very fast, and she's stronger than a Wolt. And she has a horse, which Wolt does not have. Garret getting a crit there that actually was nice. It was nice to get that crit. And Rutger will attempt to get one here as well. He will not succeed. But that's okay, because we have plenty of other units to get that kill. exact damage. Maybe I plan to get that kill to Wolt, who knows. But either way, Lance doesn't have a very strong weapon at this point to use on the boss, which sucks. Broke his killer lance on him without getting a single crit. But that's okay because we have Lilina, and Lilina does just a buttload of damage to everything all the time. She'll get a level out of that kill. I think that was like a full level, and she'll get a decent level up too. Got a lot of res now. So after this turn, we'll move in Roy and capture, and that'll be that. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.